You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one on one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 938. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. All month, we have been doing our 7-figure practice series. I mean, we've been covering some really just interesting stories around people who have done just amazing practices, like how to build your leadership team, how to buy a 6,000 square foot wellness space. We talked about making a huge impact with early decisions, hiring 10 people in 1 month. And the last episode just yesterday was your most important number. So make sure you check out all of those. Also, at the end of the month, we're doing a series of, let's count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes all about new year, new habits. So we're talking about strategies to scale up. We're going to be talking about growing multiple streams of income. We're going to talk about building courses on body image, launching podcasts, hiring, all sorts of different things that we're going to be covering as part of that New Year, New Habits series. That's going to go until the 16th, and then we're going to just keep on moving forward. If you are a 7-figure practice owner, please know that all throughout December and January, the application is open for our 7-figure practice club. So this is a unique, one-of-a-kind group that has 12 7-figure practice owners. We know that when you're around other people that are thinking like you, it's so much easier to grow and scale than if you're around people that maybe aren't at the same phase that you're at. So we're going to be meeting twice a month throughout a whole year. And the first meeting of that month is going to be 90 minutes. And we're going to have 3 25-minute hot seats where we're giving advice. We're asking questions of people. You're going to come with your questions. Say, here's what I'm needing help to dig into. So you're going to have your hot seat. And then the second time we meet in a month is one of the 12 people will be presenting for an hour about something they're just knocking out of the park, something they're feeling like they're really doing a great job with. And they're going to talk through that. And that's just a great way to really practice doing some consulting, some teaching, some different lessons and getting feedback from people that maybe are your ideal clients. Maybe they're not your ideal clients, but they're at a level where they can help you just launch whatever you're working on even faster, and maybe even encourage you to say, have you ever considered really going big with this stuff? To be around other business leaders that are at least at that 7-figure practice is just such a great way to scale up as you think about entering into this new year. Also, we're going to meet together for 2 days here in Northern Michigan in Traverse City. And then the second time we're going to meet, we have yet to decide exactly where that's going to be. But we know, from doing Killing It Camp, doing Slowdown School, doing a lot of next level living rooms, that when people meet each other in person, there's just a different sense of support, of wanting to help that person just grow and scale. So we're including that in the 7-figure practice club as well. So make sure that you apply over at practiceofthepractice.com/club. Again, that's only open until the 31st of January. Well, we are wrapping up the year with this series, and I am so excited. Today we have Irene Schreiner. I'm so excited because Irene is the owner of Solid Foundations Therapy, a medium-sized group practice that specializes in romantic relationships. One of the things that she's most proud of is creating a chaos-free and fun private practice that supports her therapists and allows them to focus the majority of their energy on being the best possible therapists for their clients. Irene, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on today.
Yeah. Well, I love how you say that you guys specialize in romantic relationships. How did you land on that tagline, and what does that mean for your practice?
So Ever since I was little, I've always thought that romantic relationships were some of the most interesting facets of life. And when I started my own practice just as a solo clinician, chose to focus on romantic relationships because I feel like when our relationships aren't in a great spot, it really affects everything else. It's hard to focus at work, it's hard to be fully present with our friends. And I really feel like most people don't have the skills to be in romantic relationships. So for our practice, we choose to work with mainly couples. About 50% of our caseload is couples. The other 50% is adult individuals. But in all facets, we focus somehow on relationships. So it could be improving communication, connection, intimacy, helping a client get through their divorce, teaching them how to date better, working with them on being a better partner, even if their significant other doesn't want to join them in session. And so we really niche in that space.
Hmm. Now, I've never heard it said that way, that we focus on romantic relationships. I've heard we're all about relationships, we help couples. How do you think just having that word romantic in there has changed who is attracted to your practice?
I think our practice as a whole has a very upbeat, positive vibe. And so the idea of romantic relationships is that sense of wanting to be connected, wanting to rekindle the potential flame that people felt towards each other, the attraction, really focusing on helping our clients be the best individuals they can be so that they can also feed their relationship. And we focus a lot on that individual accountability, that your romantic relationship is like an entity that needs to be fostered and fed. And I think it creates a little bit more of an active concept versus that idea of my partner needs to do something different for me. They're the problem. There's a lot more
Mhm.
accountability for us.
Yeah. Now, if we go back to when you started the practice, did you start just planning to do solo practice, or did you know at some point you wanted to have a group?
I think I always thought about having employees and having a group. I wasn't sure how big I wanted that to be. And I honestly probably took a slower, more methodical approach to it. I was on my own for about 2 years before I brought on my own clinician. I'm sorry, an additional clinician. And during that time, I really kind of was back and forth on should I hire, should I not hire, should I expand, should I not expand. I probably could have been a little bit more aggressive about that looking back.
Mm. Now, when did you know that like it was really time to start scaling and adding clinicians, and what did that look like?
So for me, it got to a point where I kept having my caseload be so full that then I was like, well, I can't take on any more people. I can't help. And then it would drop down a little bit, which was that back and forth second guessing for myself. And so eventually, I just had actually several girlfriends that said, like, you've been talking about this for a little bit, like, just go take the leap, hire somebody part time, see what happens. And so the space that I was in, I thought I would be able to bring on somebody part time. Long story short, that landlord wasn't as friendly and accommodating. So we went from one space to a larger space that had 3 rooms. And so then my efficiency brain said, well, if I have 3 rooms, I need to fill those 3 rooms. And so we kind of went from just myself and one other clinician to kind of consistently adding people as we got full.
Mm. Now, did you initially start? You said employees earlier. Did you initially start right away with W two, or did you have 1099s, or how did you decide which direction you wanted to go with that?
So I really love training newer clinicians. And so part of that was being able to bring on provisionally licensed clinicians. And in the state of Illinois, if you are a provisionally licensed clinician, you have to be a W 2. So I had a W 2 model from the start.
Mm, okay. So I know one thing that before we started recording, that as we talked about, like, what do you really feel like you're doing well was solid systems. And so I think that's an area so many clinicians struggle with. They're good at the therapy, maybe they don't have solid systems or ways they do it, or the way that they started is way different than where they landed and they have to undo systems. Tell us, when you think about systems, what are the core systems that you have in your practice? And maybe we can outline a little bit more on each of those.
Yeah, I think we have really solid policies and procedures in place. So every employee that comes on from the beginning, they have a very solid handbook that they can always go back to and look. And because they know their expectations, I think it reduces anxiety to know like where they can practice within, what their scope is, what are all the different expectations of them from the employee side. So I think having that very clearly laid out really helps. Along with that, we now, for the last probably 4 or 5 years, have had an onboarding coordinator. And so she is with the new clinicians for the first 90 days. She's their point person. She meets with them once a week. And so we have a very systemic way of what they're learning in week one, what they're learning in week two, what they're doing during the first supervision. She will sit down with them and actually help them write their first set of notes so they know exactly what our process is for writing notes. We've also systemized our notes. So we have a template that we follow. We do monthly and quarterly audits of notes to make sure that people are on track. And again, they have a checklist, they know what to expect. Um, on the back end, we also have really great systems for tracking referrals. So we always know, are we up in a month? Are we down in a month? Or how are we doing this October compared to last October, which really helps with my personal anxiety. If it feels like we're having a slow month, I can always look back and go, oh yeah, this is how it was this time of year, which really also helps us figure out patterns. The other one that I really love is we have our clinicians track what kind of cancellations they have, whether they're 24-hour, more than 24-hour no shows, the reasons behind those, which really helps us dial into what is the expectation of how many cancellations is normal versus not normal. Do you have what we call a frequent flyer client that's constantly canceling on you, which lets you know that you need to tighten up maybe a policy within the session, or you need to have a conversation with them, or maybe even remove them from your caseload. And it really helps me dial into like the numbers of what is expected and what's normal and average. And it also helps us work with our team to help them find areas of growth, areas that they're doing really great in, maybe areas that they need to like investigate a little bit further. So those are probably our core systems that I really fall back on often.
Yeah. Well, I love that checking to see how things are going. I remember the very first place that I really worked when I was in my undergrad. It was a runaway shelter, and their quality assurance was insane. It was this Catholic Family Services down in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they had probably 10 retired grandmas that would volunteer to go through all the progress notes and the files to audit it, just to make sure that things were, up to snuff. And it was amazing how well we always did when we had, different audits for accreditation or things like that. Whereas when I worked at other places, people would freak out when, the accreditation was happening. And to just see that really early on, of just having that ongoing monitoring, but not just monitoring, but then reteaching and making sure that, hey, like, maybe you didn't learn this, but we need to make sure you kind of raise your game a little bit, was really a great way to kind of learn early on in my career. Now, when you think about helping your staff, like, I know that systems, one thing they help do is reduce costs. How do you think through the financial side of things if you're reducing costs through these systems?
So, because we have really good systems in place, I feel like I don't have to spend a lot of our overhead budget on non financially producing staff. So, I have two really amazing admins that both work part time, and I couldn't do things without them. But because things are so efficient, they're able to be part time. I don't need to have 2 or 3 or 4 full 40-hour a week billers, schedulers, organizers, things like that. So those are those are roles that don't produce income to the business. And so that profit can go back into the business in terms of giving our employees really great benefits, raises, bonuses. We do a lot with continuing education. I'm able to buy trainings and support that because I've got that in our budget that isn't going to staff that isn't producing income. Similarly, with our leadership team, because the systems are so clear, they're still able to be very client focused, which is their passion. They're only doing about 2, 3 hours a week of like leadership time. And so again, that that budget is going towards the employees, supporting them, and also making sure that the business is really solid. We don't have to worry about making payroll or asking people to work crazy amounts of hours to make sure that we're hitting all of our budgets.
Yeah. So how did you? I'm just thinking when somebody first starts a business, oftentimes they don't have that forethought to say, I'm going to put this money back into staff or into benefits or different things. When did you start thinking through, oh, I want to enhance kind of the DNA of this company and of the staff by giving better benefits or doing different types of things?
Mhm. For me, I think it was really about retaining talent and making sure that we are creating a space both in a tangible and intangible way that people want to be at. And I think benefits is a large part of that. I came from a practice where I was a 1099, even though I shouldn't have been, didn't know that at the time. There were no benefits. So I have, was paying for my health insurance 100% from the beginning. I remember for several years, I couldn't take time off. I didn't travel. I didn't take vacations because if I wasn't working, I wasn't making an income. And so I didn't want that for my staff. And so as we were growing, I would add a benefit like every year, every 6 months for a while. And I would really just talk with my staff about what was valuable. And so we would add health insurance and make sure that, okay, that was still within the budget, that wasn't putting too much strain on anybody. Then we started adding PTO. I don't remember what number we started with, but at this point, my staff can earn up to 3 weeks paid vacation because we've just kind of built that in. Um, Similarly, the tuition reimbursement one was one that several people kind of said this would be a cool feature. So we added that in. I think continuing education was one of the first ones we added. And so I just did it kind of in a slow, methodical way, even though I had a bunch of benefits that I thought would be really cool and would have been awesome to offer immediately. I chose to kind of track with my staff to say which ones are most important to you. Let's create, a scaled version and then slowly added each one to make sure that the business can also sustain them.
Yeah. As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using therapy notes. They make billing, scheduling, note taking, telehealth, and e prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the #1 highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. Now, currently, what sorts of things do you do to invest in the staff by having these efficiencies and having extra money to invest in the staff?
So, on top of just what I would consider like the standard benefits at this point, which is the PTO, the health insurance, tuition reimbursement, liability insurance, things like that. We do continuing education stipends every year that increase with amount based on how long somebody's with the practice. We've also been able to implement monthly and twice a year bonuses so that there's an opportunity for them to earn a little bit extra. I pay for trainings. We purchase trainings every quarter. We do them kind of as a learn on your own, and then we do a once a quarter like sit down as a team and talk about what we got from that training. I'm also able to invest in having outside speakers come in to teach us, just to constantly be enhancing that piece. And then, unlike this, what I consider the extra fun side is we do quarterly team events. They vary from a barbecue where all of the staff and their families can come to we've done axe throwing, we've done those really cool ropes courses. We do something different every quarter. The one that sticks and is every single year now is we do a spa day, which is actually coming up this Friday. Instead of like a Christmas party, I treat my team to a spa day where they get massages and facials and pedicures and manicures. And that tends to be like the favorite self-care for everybody.
Mm, how fun. I think every phase of private practice has its own challenges and opportunities. As you look at being a seven-figure practice, what are the challenges at that phase?
I think I don't know if it's necessarily linked to the seven figures, but I think it's linked to the size that we're at. So we've got about 10 clinicians right now. And I jokingly say that in the family systems world, we're kind of like we're like a teenager practice where there's some growing pains in terms of wanting to bring up some more solid leadership, having a little bit more division between myself and the regular staff therapist so that they've got just for some personalities having more comfort coming to maybe a supervisor versus the boss. So creating some of that, I think, has probably been our largest growing pain of being able to scale to that 15 clinicians, 20 clinician space that I'd ultimately like to be at, but having solid enough support systems that I'm not the only go-to person.
Mm, yeah. What kind of systems do you have set up so that you aren't that go-to person?
So right now I have an additional supervisor on staff that everybody knows that they can go to her and speak with her if they need something. We are in the process of hiring some other supervisors. Ideally, I'd love to have 3 to 4 supervisors that are each kind of in charge of 2 or 3 clinicians. So that's kind of our current goal and phase. We also we do regular surveys. We also do anonymous surveys in case somebody's uncomfortable. And then our most recent addition that's come out of just some of the staff suggesting it is we've made an anonymous kind of virtual suggestion box through Google Forms. So anybody, if they've got a concern, if they just have a fun suggestion, if they've got a solution to something and don't feel comfortable being the first voice to bring it up, they can fill out that suggestion box. I get the alert. And then we'll discuss it with our current leadership as well as then potentially bring it out to the whole staff to discuss and problem solve.
What kind of suggestions have come out of that?
There was one about discussing our bonus structure. So somebody had a couple of ideas about can we make the bonus structure a little bit more attainable or can we have a progression of training to reach the bonuses? That was one of them. I had another one around time off. So being able to potentially earn additional time off throughout the year, even if it's unpaid, are the 2 most recent ones that I could think of.
Mm. Now, if someone has a small group practice, say they have between 1 and 3 folks working for them, and they really want to start to scale to where you're at, what sort of systems would you say they should first start evaluating?
I would encourage them to really track their referrals. So finding out how many referrals are they averaging per month, how many like where their referral source is coming from, what's their close rate, so that they can make a decision around how quickly they can fill a clinician and how often they need to hire. So for us at this point, we're generally able to fill a clinician in about 3 months because we want to make sure that we don't overwhelm them with too many intakes. And so we have found that with a new clinician, if they're getting 3 intakes a week, that's a pretty good sweet spot for us. So tracking all of that. Something else we've additionally started tracking more recently is virtual versus in person. I know everybody's completely different. For our practice, we're probably getting about 80% requested in person. And that has helped us in terms of being able to say, can we offer a hybrid schedule? Is that a reasonable thing to offer to a clinician? Or do we need to say, nope, we need in person clinicians and maybe a couple of hours virtual? So I think all of that helps. I would also really encourage them to dig into their financial numbers. Are they getting their insurance reimbursements within a good, timely fashion? What is their actual average hourly rate? Because what our self pay rate is and what might be advertised on the website isn't actually what we get paid when we average out between insurance and things like that if you're an insurance based practice. So knowing exactly what your actual hourly average is, tracking out all of your expenses. So really getting into like the nitty gritty to see what can you truly afford and what does each, for lack of a better word, like what can you really pay your clinicians to make sure that you then also still have the budget to overhead and growth? Because I think knowing exactly what your pay scale can be is also really important to being able to attract clinicians and pay them a fair amount.
Hmm. Now, what tools are you using to track all of those different things? Are you using Google Forms, or like what are you using to keep track of all those different numbers?
So we use QuickBooks, but I will also say I'm incredibly spoiled in the sense that for every type of concept I've come up with, my husband has been able to create a tracking sheet for me. And so we use Google Sheets for most of that. And so he has created templates for me that um, for example, the budgeting one has like 7 or 8 different sheets that talks about like, here's the cost of an employee, here's the cost of the overhead, here's the cost of rent or owning your building. And I can plug in all those numbers and it will give me specific percentages and dollar amounts. And I can play with if I give somebody this much of a raise, how does that affect everything? If I give this kind of a bonus, how does that affect everything? Um,
Mm,
Similarly, with our referral sheets, he's built me a referral sheet that tracks all of the different things I mentioned, plus a couple of others, that then aggregates all of that data into a total for the year, and then also comparisons for previous years as well.
so awesome. Now, one thing that I've noticed a lot of smaller practices that don't yet have that rhythm of having enough clients and then hiring and then more clients and hiring, that kind of back and forth. Right now, it seems like the hiring side is rather difficult for a lot of people. What do you, when you're thinking through hiring someone, knowing you can have them full within 3 months? What are you finding is working in hiring right now?
Hiring, I would agree with you. Hiring is definitely challenging. Um, are you referring to just finding people to interview or having people apply? I'm sorry, looking
Yeah,
for a little
yeah. I mean, I
clarification.
would say all of it. It seems like what I'm noticing is, in the summer and kind of early fall, a lot of our consulting clients or group practice boss owners were kind of freaking out with referrals. And then they did a lot around pay per click, SEO. And now, at the time of this recording, they're getting, 30 to 50 referrals a month, but then they don't, their team is very quickly filling up and they're like, we got to hire 2 or 3 more people. What are you finding in regards to finding good candidates, bringing them on, having appealing compensation packages? What's working right now for you in hiring new employees?
Hiring has definitely been challenging. So being consistent on like the Indeed ads, and I've just chosen to be in a phase where like I'm always open to a good candidate. So I've not put myself in a place where I say, no, we're not hiring right now. So having our job ads up, being very active on LinkedIn has helped. So connecting with other professionals, networking with other area professionals that where, maybe they have an applicant and their practice that specializes in children and this applicant would prefer to work with couples. So they will send them my way just like I will send them a child candidate, just looking for the right fit. um, I also think it's just important to be picky right now. So even though, and this is something I personally struggle with as well, there can be that anxiety to say, okay, I've got the referrals, my practice is full, I want to add somebody else because I need somebody else, I need a body to take these referrals on. But I actually think it's more important to slow down and take your time and be willing to say no to somebody if they don't feel like the right fit. So being, I guess another part of the systems that I didn't think about until just now is making sure to really build out your values. So know what your values are in terms of your brand, in terms of the culture that you want to have, what you're trying to build, so that way when you're in that interview process, you can really be asking those questions and making sure that those people that you're considering bringing on to your staff really possess that value culture. They align with the way you want to run your business.
Yeah, awesome. Well, the last question that I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Being a boss is difficult. Having a good team around you is super important in terms of your staff, but also having a group of colleagues that you can vent to, check ideas off of, get support from is absolutely invaluable because it can feel very isolating no matter how much of an amazing boss you want to be and or are, you're never going to please everybody. So there's always going to be an employee that's maybe not as thrilled with something or wants a policy changed or may not stick around or may not be the right fit for you. And so having that support people around you to help pull you back up and validate you is crucial.
So awesome. And Irene, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So email is probably the best way, which is just irene@solidfoundationstherapy.com. Our website is also a great resource for information about our team, who we are, what we do. We do lots of blogs and videos, which is www.solidfoundationstherapy.com. And then I'm also in the process of opening up a consulting company that's specifically going to be focusing on helping the visionaries get organized and helping people build out good systems so they can also run their practices efficiently. That's going to be Solid Foundations Consulting and Coaching. And we're in the process of building that website right now. But if you have any interest in that, email me and I will add you to our list of potential clients for the future.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Irene.
Thank you so much for having me.
This series has been so fun to do, to just talk through seven-figure practices, all the ups and downs of it, and how sometimes the things that we see with smaller group practices are still issues with large practices, and it's just figuring out that right staff. I love that final point that Irene made about just not hiring just anybody. I still remember when I had a play therapist leave mental wellness counseling, and she was amazing and worked with so many kids. And then I really wanted to replace her because we had done a lot of marketing around play therapy. And there was this new lady, and I met with her, and I just didn't feel right. But she was a registered play therapist, and she was so disruptive after I hired her. She would get in these petty little fights with people over like who moved my scissors, who printed on my printer, and we ended up parting ways. But it was one of those things where from the beginning, I could tell that she just wasn't going to be a good fit for the practice, for what we had created of a drama-free environment also, just like Irene, where, nobody got in fights or disagreements. So to have someone that got so worked up over a pair of scissors or printing on the printer, it was like, really? And so I love that point of like, don't just hire somebody because of the opportunity of how many clients you have coming in. That's such a great piece of advice. Also, don't forget, if you are a seven-figure practice owner, the Seven Figure Practice Club application is now open over at practiceofthepractice.com/club. You can read all about it there. It has the price point, the application, all of that right there at practiceofthepractice.com/club. Also, we could not do this show without our amazing sponsors. Therapy Notes is our sponsor today. TherapyNotes.com is the best EHR that's out there. Makes it so easy to know your numbers, know where your staff is at with where they're at. They also will help you move from whatever platform you're on now over. You can try Therapy Notes for free if you use promo code Joe. And also if you're in one of our membership communities, we can get you some extra months for free as well. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.